Happy Sunday, Thunder fans. Along with Josh Callaway, I am Colby Daniels. The Oklahoma City Thunder officially have a dance partner for the 2025 NBA Finals. The Indiana Pacers defeated the New York Knicks last night in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. It is OKC, Indiana, Josh, just as every NBA fan walking the planet had hoped for entering the basketball season.
Yeah, it's funny. There's been a lot of discourse about, there's no big markets. The ratings aren't going to be as good. Who cares? All right. Why would you care about that? These are the two best teams, pretty clearly. They were two best teams, really since the start of the new year. Obviously, Thunder were the one seed and the best team in the West really all year. But the Pacers, since kind of the turn of the new year back in January, have been right at the top of the East. They've ran through the Eastern Conference in the playoffs, just like the Thunder did in the West. These are the two best teams. They're ascending franchises, awesome fan bases. This is a great finals, and I'm really excited to see it.
I think stylistically, both of these teams are fun to watch, right? I mean, they play an enjoyable brand of basketball, or if nothing else, they play the brand of basketball that everybody for years and years and years on social media has said they wanted to watch in the NBA, and you finally have it. And I guess because it's not LA, Boston, Miami, or New York, maybe there are people that don't like the fact that this is the matchup. I do think it's a fun matchup. I do think it's still advantage Oklahoma City, but you have to play the games. And I'm just excited for both OKC and Indiana. And I guess I'm excited for all the Paul George haters, right? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as a Paul George hater, but I've seen a lot of the whole, this is the Paul George series because both of these franchises are now, the roster as they're built now are based off of what ultimately took place from Paul George demanding out of both situations.
It is. It's the Paul George Bowl. I assume he'll be watching, but this has got to hurt him a little inside. Not that he roots against the Thunder or the Pacers, I wouldn't imagine, but like you said, I mean, as I'm sure most people are familiar, both these franchises, like you said, completely jump-started this group that they have right now. This core is thanks to a Paul George trade. Both teams are right at that same on that same level in that regard. So it is kind of funny, the Paul George Bowl. But yeah, it'll be a fun matchup. These are the two best teams, and like you said, we'll see if Paul George does he get out to one of these games? There's been a lot of talk about former players maybe coming back to town. I don't know how that would go over, but it'll be a weird series for him, I'm sure.
Which home game would he attend? Would he attend like an OKC game, or would he attend an Indiana game?
Go to the whole thing. Why not?
Yeah, just attend all seven, and I guess both fan bases can collectively both thank you and boo you at the same time, right? Yeah. Your demand to get out of your situation is ultimately what propelled them to the next level. That's just some of the fodder, I think, for what this series is going to be. We are 4 days removed, Josh, from the Western Conference Finals. We still have 4 games to go until Game 1, so a lot of time to really break down this matchup. But as we will do each and every day leading up to the start of the NBA Finals and throughout the NBA Finals, we had Thunder media availability today. We spoke to Jalen Williams, Mark Daigneault, and Cason Wallace. I have some sound from J-Dub. I have some sound from Mark Daigneault, so we'll jump into that, get some reaction. But here was what J-Dub had to say on the Pacers matchup.
They play fast, and that's what kind of fuels their whole identity. And they're really talented. Mark made a really good point. They are feeling the exact same way we feel. You know what I mean? They've had to win 3 series. We've had to win 3 series. So they're coming in extremely confident. We're coming in confident. So should be really fun. But yeah, that drives their thing. I think just their pace, and you kind of saw it just wear down the Knicks a little bit. So that's something that we'll look at. And, we'll just go from there.
There you go. That is the danger of what Indy brings to the table. I will say a couple things. First and foremost, they wore down the Knicks. The Knicks don't have depth, right? You wouldn't classify depth as a strength of that New York basketball team. The Thunder have the greatest depth in the NBA right now, I believe, at least. And I don't think New York ultimately just has the firepower overall, where I think the Thunder certainly do.
Yeah, I mean, to J-Dub's point, right, the Pacers have had to earn it too, right? I mean, the East 100%. Is not as good as the West. We talk about that all the time. Not quite the star power, and just generally the depth of the conference isn't as good. But you look at who Indiana beat. They beat a good Milwaukee team. You got Giannis Antetokounmpo over there. Obviously a guy who's won a championship and MVP. They took down Cleveland, who a lot of people thought was a team that it was a given, right? That it was going to be Cleveland and Boston. in the conference finals. Obviously, the Cavs won over 60 games themselves, and Indiana really controlled that series. Now, the Cavs were beat up a little bit. And then they beat the Knicks, and the Knicks just beat Boston. There was all this confidence with what they had going on in MSG and all that. So the Pacers, while, again, the East isn't as tough as the West, they've had 3 pretty impressive series wins of their own. They're playing really good basketball. Like I said, the Knicks don't have the depth anywhere near like what the Thunder are going to throw at the Pacers. But the Indiana is one team that if you were going to say could maybe rival OKC's depth, they'd probably be as close as it's going to get really in the NBA.
Right.
With the way that Obi Toppin's been playing off the bench, T.J. McConnell, Benedict Mathurin, Shepherd as well. Like they have a lot of guys that they'll let play a lot of minutes off the bench. So if anyone can kind of try to match the Thunder's depth, it probably would be Indiana. You still give OKC the edge there. But again, if anyone can at least get close, it probably would be this Pacers team. So from that perspective, that's going to be kind of interesting to see the bench battle, in this series.
I don't think they had to go through nearly the same level of gauntlet, if you will, that OKC did with Denver and Minnesota. That said, they didn't beat a bunch of nobodies, right? I mean, they beat a former NBA champion in Giannis and the Bucks in the first round. Granted, injuries on that Bucks team. They beat a beat-up Cleveland team that was great through the regular season. Injuries, I think, somewhat derailed their postseason success. And then they beat up on this Knicks team. Regardless of their path, they're playing their best basketball of the season, and they're clearly playing better basketball now than they were in the 2 regular season matchups that Oklahoma City won. So I think if you don't respect this opponent, then it can come back to bite you. And we've seen that even in the first round, right? They didn't respect Memphis in that Game 3 performance. Next thing you know, they're down by an ungodly amount. And luckily, they were good enough to overcome that one. But they went into the Minnesota Game 3 also playing just a half-hearted brand of basketball, and they got run out of the gym. So Indiana is absolutely good enough to take this team to the woodshed if they don't show up with the right mentality. And at least for them, in 90% of these postseason games, they've had the right mentality. Is in terms of the big stage, J-Dub talked about just the test overall that this NBA Finals is.
Yeah, it should be fun. All tests are fun. And we get to do it on the biggest stage any of us have ever played on. So it'll be a very fun challenge. Like I said, that's a really good team. Obviously, they're in the finals for a reason. Nobody just waltzes into the finals, so it'll be our ultimate test.
The final boss, the Indiana Pacers. Exactly. By the way, I've heard a lot of people talk about like Tyrese Halliburton, about Pascal Siakam, some of the other players that you obviously have to pay attention to. I've not really heard many people make the point about what a dude their head coach is, right? I mean, Rick Carlisle has been around this league for a long, long time, and I'm not saying that the NBA, I don't know to what percentage you would say the coach plays in terms of overall team success, but Rick Carlisle does nothing but win everywhere he's been. He's been around the block. He's been in this situation. He is a championship head coach, and that's at least a check mark on the side of this Indiana Pacers team, having a guy that's been through this before.
No, 100%. You completely read my mind. I had the same thought of, a lot of talk about SJ, Halliburton, Siakam, J-Dub, Miles Turner against Chet or Hartenstein or whatever, and there are a lot of really fun matchups on the floor. But the coaching battle here, Mark Daigneault and Rick Carlisle, I mean, Daigneault's obviously a young coach, but I think you feel like the Thunder have the coaching edge in a lot of the teams they play. Again, even though he's a young coach, there's such a high level of respect and faith in Mark Daigneault and the way he can scheme things up and the Thunder staff. But Indiana's going to match him. Like you said, Rick Carlisle, really good coach, has won a championship. You feel like he's one of those coaches that elevates his team and puts them in the best chance to win. So the coaching battle here, this will be one of the tougher, I think, head-to-head mind versus mind battles that Daigneault's had, in his young coaching career. I'm glad you brought that up because it's a really good point, something that maybe doesn't get talked about enough.
And speaking of Mark Daigneault, he was asked about just what a good look it is to have these two teams specifically and the what they stand for, the type of basketball they play, repping the NBA in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I think this Finals is a great representation with the two teams that are in it. They're teams that play, good, exciting styles of basketball. Players that have great individual stories, teams that have a great story collectively, and we're proud to be a part of that.
There you go. Two great stories. The only thing you can say negative about this matchup, Josh, is the fact that it's Indiana and Oklahoma, right? Like it's not LA, Miami, Dallas, New York, Chicago. It's not a big market team, or at least one of these teams isn't a big market team. That's the only negative about the matchup. If you take the name of the city off of what these two teams are, and it's just Thunder Pacers, and you insert them anywhere else in the country into any other big market, people are drooling about what potentially the basketball in this matchup looks like, in my opinion.
Exactly, for sure. Like I said earlier, these are clearly the two best teams. So just from that alone, you should be excited about the series. But yeah, like they're two franchises that have built it the right way, quote unquote, right? I mean, through savvy trades, drafting guys, building it up. It's not, look, I don't have anything against big markets. It's fun to get those big market matchups. I love that stuff too. Don't get me wrong. But like, this isn't some, the Lakers or something, or the Knicks even, if they had made it this year, where it's just, they go out and they signed X free agent and that took them over the level. Like these teams and franchises have had to build it. They've got great fan bases. It should be awesome environments. Both, obviously, we know it will be here in Oklahoma City, but I imagine so in Indianapolis as well. Like it's really kind of like the good parts of sports are on display in this series in a lot of ways. And the fact that two smaller markets can get there, especially in the NBA, where it's always like the smaller markets are at a disadvantage in the NBA. It's really cool. It's cool just as a sports fan, just in general. And then again, they're the two best teams anyway. So it's really a great series all the way around, and one that I think most casual sports fans should be pumped up about, even if it's not the big cities, the big franchise like the Lakers, Knicks, Celtics, whatever.
You are preaching, my man. I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm excited about the matchup. We'll have, obviously, the rest of the week to talk about it. We'll have the NBA Finals Media Day to dive more into it, get more reaction. We'll be at Thunder Media Availability every single day leading up to the Finals and throughout the NBA Finals. But we finally have an opponent for OKC. It is the Thunder versus the Pacers. Game 1 from the Paycom Center on Thursday night. Tip-off scheduled for 7:30, which, because it's an ESPN ABC property, that probably means it'll tip off around 9:45. So just be ready for the 7:30 start, but 9:45 tip-off. I'm kidding, but that's what it feels like from the scheduled start time. All right, Josh, we'll do it again tomorrow. Appreciate you, my man. For Josh Callaway, I am Colby Daniels. We'll have more Thunder coverage coming up tomorrow.